Okay, I'll call the order of the RTC meeting for July 20th, 2018 with a roll call, please. Sorry, I didn't see you weren't in there.
Sorry about that. Neoma Jardin. Present. Paul McKenzie.
Here.
Bob Lucy not present. Ron Smith.
Here.
Lee Gibson.
Present.
Dale Ferguson.
Here.
Rudy Malfabon. Here. And Von Hartung is not present, for the record. Thank you.
Okay, we have a quorum, and if you all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Mr. Malfabon, would you lead us?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we'll move on to special recognitions. Are you going to do most of these, Michael? Combo. Okay, so the first one is recognition of the
David will go
2018 Catherine McCleary Operator of the Year Award winner. Who's doing that?
Mr. Jickling.
Mr. Jinkling. Good morning.
Good morning. There we go. I'm David Jickling, Director of Public Transportation and Operations for the RTC, and it's my pleasure this morning to introduce Harley Kempter, the General Manager for MV Transportation, who will introduce this item and his stellar employee.
Good morning. Each year, MV Transportation and its 15,000 plus professional operators embark on a journey of safety and professionalism. Each quarter, each division selects one driver to be recognized. At the end of the year, those 4 are then put into a pool, and from that division, the annual winner is awarded. From there, those winners go on to regional and national competition amongst the other drivers from the 15,000 plus member pool. I'm pleased to announce that the 2018 Catherine McCleary Driver of the Year from amongst that 15,000 plus member pool is John Moss, who has been a driver for RTC for the last 11 years. And I can't think of a better way to have started my first day at the division than with his presentation of the Catherine McCleary Driver of the Year Award. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. John Moss.
Thank you. I
Welcome,
appreciate
John.
it very much.
You want to say a few words, John? Come on, this is a big award.
I'm from Reno. I was born at Washoe Med, and I love our town. This is a, I'm sorry. This is a very great honor to receive from MV and from you all. I appreciate it very much.
Well, John, thank you. John, why don't you come up? We're going to get a picture with 3 or 4 of you.
Yeah, John would love to stick around, but he's got a route to drive. So
No, he can wait 1 second. We won't mark him late.
Do you want us up here or down there? Where do you want?
Up here is fine. Okay. We'll have you guys do that.
Yeah, we'll just stand up here.
Come bearing gifts. Yeah. So now Naoma can have 2 boxes of donuts.
Perfect. Get in here, Naomi. You're better looking than both of us.
How do we do this?
We're good? Everybody squeezing?
Yeah.
One way or the other.
Should we dance?
Still can't find me.
All right, 1, 2, 3. One more. 1, 2, 3.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Nice job.
Job well done. Thank you, John. Okay, moving on. The next one is a presentation of the Nevada Department of Transportation 2017 Excellence in Partnering Gold Award for the Pyramid McCarran Intersection Improvement Project in recognition of RTC and project partners. Michael.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Michael Moreno, Public Affairs Manager. We're very proud to receive this partnering award with our partners on the Pyramid McCarran project. I'd like to invite Director Malfabon down to the lectern to make the introductions and issue the awards.
Thanks, Michael. So NDOT gives Excellence in Partnering Awards to several projects, and this project was of note, being a partnership between the RTC of Washoe County and NDOT. The 2017 Excellence in Partnering Gold Award recognizes the collaborative efforts of the RTC of Washoe County, NDOT, City of Sparks, HDR, Construction Materials Engineers, Nichols Consulting Engineers, Black Eagle Consulting, CA Group Incorporated, TaylorMade Solutions, Granite Construction Company, partnering facilitator Renee Hoekstra of RHA LLC, subcontractors and stakeholders in the successful completion of the Pyramid McCarran intersection improvements. The project required intersection reconstruction without severely disrupting the passage of 60,000 vehicles a day. There was a lot of outreach on this project, which really was important to the success. The team built trust with the local community by ensuring that the 3-week look-ahead schedules released to the public were reliable. And some of the notable project successes were, despite the extreme weather that we experienced up here, the project was completed 5 months ahead of schedule. The team partnered with NV Energy and AT&T to trim utility relocation installation from 18 months to 2 months. The contractor used a marathon paving strategy to reduce impact to local businesses from several weeks to just 72 hours. And precast retaining walls at no additional cost were installed to save 25 working days, and no claims were filed. And all the issues were resolved at the project level, which is an important aspect of the partnering process. So for the project, Scott Gibson represented RTC as the project manager for the, and I'll just read off the names first. Consultant construction crew, Mike Brown with NCE, Shane Cocking with Black Eagle, Marty Crew with CME. Granite Construction, Jason Fritz was the project superintendent, Andrew Howard, the project engineer, and Mark Timman was the project engineer as well. For partnering facilitator, I mentioned Renee Hoekstra. And additional stakeholders, Amber Sosa was the transportation manager for City of Sparks, and Kathleen Taylor conducted the public outreach for TaylorMade Solutions on this project. Well done project, and we really appreciate at NDOT the fact that RTC invested so much into this project, which is an intersection of 2 state highways, McCarran Boulevard and Pyramid Way. So congratulations to the team. We have several of the awards here. We'll ask the representatives to come up for this project. So if I mentioned your name or your companies and you're representing your company, could you please come on up? So definitely RTC's project manager, the NCE, Black Eagle, CME, Granite Construction, and I don't know if Renee is up here from the...
She is not. Renee
Okay.
Is not.
City of Sparks and TaylorMade Solutions.
You know, and I want to say to everybody, if you haven't seen this project, you would not recognize the intersection. It turned out wonderful. I thought the way it was built, the way it was run, everything was just perfect. The City of Sparks couldn't be more pleased than we are with this.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
may I make a comment?
sure, absolutely.
Thank you very much. I think what may speak volumes about this project, and Lee is very familiar because I would call him every morning with my daily transportation update, is during this construction, my son learned to drive. And he goes to school at Reed, and we live in Somerset. So we didn't take the freeway because the Spaghetti Bowl is too dangerous. Where's Rudy? But we did take the McCarran to go this route. And he learned to drive through all of the construction and all the lane changes and all that thing. So I am confident he will be a very, very good driver because you guys did a fantastic job with that. He navigated that safely as a new driver, and I just have to say, it is fantastic now. We still drive it virtually every day. What a difference. You all should be so very, very proud.
Absolutely. Isn't it? It's nice.
Stop it. God damn. Luminor telling me. Give me a complex.
A little more, Dale.
Am I out of the picture yet, Ron?
Right here? No, you're good.
Is that what you want? Paul?
Suck it in, everybody.
And thank you so much for that job. Wonderful. Thank you. Good job.
Yeah. No, I drove through, where was I going yesterday? I was going to the hospital.
Oh, it's
I was-
beautiful.
And I kept through, I'm like, Jesus, this is beautiful. I want to be here.
Okay, the next one on the agenda is the recognition of community agencies and businesses participating in the Southeast Connector pre-grand opening fun run, walk, and bike event. And here's another project that we're getting rave reviews on, which is the Southeast Connector. The biggest complaint is the speed limit is 45 miles an hour. But honestly, I get calls all the time about, thank you for building that, and that goes to the board up here. But go ahead, Michael.
Again, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Michael Moreno, RTC Public Affairs Manager, to present recognition of our community partners for our pre-grand opening of the Southeast Connector. On June 30th, the RTC executed its biggest event on the largest venue with the most people in attendance. Approximately 4,000 members of the community attended the Southeast Connector pre-grand opening fun run walk bike event on the new 5.5-mile segment of Veterans Parkway. Approximately 1 week later, the official grand opening ceremony of the Southeast Connector took place with over 200 people attending. Lee will highlight the grand opening in his director's report. As Lee likes to say, all hands were on deck for planning, delivery, and community pride. The execution of these events resulted in very successful celebrations with our community and was made possible with the support and participation from several community partners. In a moment, I will recognize these partners. I would like to share with you some of the highlights with regards to the media and that we received. The grand opening activities received extensive local media coverage, both on TV, radio, and newspaper. We had a high number of social media shares, posts, and reach. Additionally, the Southeast Connector project is being prominently featured in magazines, both locally, which you have a copy of one at your positions, and as well as in industry national magazines of the American Planning Association and the American Public Works Association. We will also be highlighted in a statewide business magazine, Nevada Business, next month. So this morning, it is my honor to present certificates of appreciation on your behalf to our community partners. As I mentioned at the top of my remarks, a lot of planning and coordination went into this, and as we all know, when you're putting events on, it's kind of stressful getting to the day, but when it finally happens, it seems like it was all flawless, and we felt like it was. All of us that were there that day received compliments, accolades, praises from the public, just excited that the new road was open, the fact that there's a new multi-use path that they can walk, run, bike on, and so it was really exciting to deliver this project after many, many years of not only planning but construction to the community. So with that, I will begin calling out names. Not all of the community partners are here, but I will still call their names. They will come down, get their certificate, and stay in a holding pattern before we take a photo with all of you. I will start with the Alamo Casino.
And we'll hold our applause to the end.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
No clapping.
Atkins.
So no clapping anymore.
Yeah, no clapping.
The Community Emergency Response Team. Double Diamond Athletic Club, Edible Pedal, and you guys can come down as I call your names. Granite Construction, Lime Bike, The Little Donut, Northern Nevada Medical Center, Nugget Casino Resort, Outlets at Legends, RC Willie, REMSA, Reno Fire Department, Reno Police Department, Reno Running Company, Renown Health, Shields, Sparks Police, this entire group, and I also want to recognize the RTC team because we had a little part in this as well. But I want to acknowledge a couple of my team members. One is here, Lauren Ball and Nicole Coots, who really were a tremendous asset and support to me and to all of us to put this event on. For the grand opening event, I did ask some of our community partners to also come to this recognition. And I'd like to bring up Reed High School Band, the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, Shane Whitecloud, and Spanish Springs High School JROTC Color Guard. Ladies and gentlemen, members of the board, please join me in giving a grand applause for all of these folks. So in the
Michael, I think
interest
we
of
need a
time-
drone.
I'm sorry.
We need a drone to take a picture of this.
The guy right in front of you is our drone operator.
We need a bigger room.
So in the interest of time, I will give you your certificates in the back of the room because, you know, I knew it was impressive and awesome, all the help that we had, but seeing all of you here just makes me really happy. So thank you very much.
We need more layers, and we want to, I'm taking the picture because Lauren needs to be part of this. And Michael needs to be.
Yeah, Michael, you need to get in there too.
Michael needs to be in the front.
You're looking at somebody's head, the camera can't see you. So try to position yourself.
They try that on the buses. We can't see our mirrors. We can't see you.
Right. That's a decision on your own part if you don't want to be in the photo.
Okay, I think we got it.
You know, this just goes to show the amount of effort that goes into one of these events. Thank you. And I can't think of anything more positive, Michael, than what happened on June 30th, and then, of course, the grand opening on July 6th. So I want to thank everybody personally, and if any other comment from the commissioners, please, Mr. Lucy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can't tell you how elated I am to have this road open and the grand opening ceremonies and really the collaboration of all the community partners that came together to really celebrate a real monumental day for our region. I mean, opening a road of this magnitude and really showing the strength of our community, because this is your road. This is the road that you built. This is with your tax dollars. This is what we put together. You're really building your community around a piece of asphalt, and it's amazing. It's amazing to see the people come together and to see the turnout. 4,000 people on the Saturday for the fun run and walk. All the people that just showed up for the grand opening. It was amazing. And truly is connecting communities and connecting people. This is just how we do it here at RTC. We're building communities through connections, and I can't say enough. It's not just our staff and our team, but as you can see, everybody in the community who really build into this. So as I look out and pan across, I see so many people had day-to-day effort in this. So thank you. It means so much to everybody. And not even those that are just in the room, but just for the community that has no idea that all the effort and time you guys put into it. So thank you.
Thank you. Michael, anything else?
No, just, and to follow Vice Chairman Lucy's comment, what you saw here today and what we did out there at the Southeast Connector was truly a public-private partnership.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you again, everybody. Okay, fun stuff. Okay, we'll move on to the approval of the agenda. Anybody want to pull anything? Mr. Gibson?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to pull item 6.2, and we're going to bring that back next month with next month's agenda.
Okay, any other items? Okay, looking for motion to accept the agenda.
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Boy, we know how to clear a room.
Yeah. Just get your words and head on out.
Yeah.
Stick around for the good stuff.
Bob was late because he took a shower this morning.
Yeah,
I cleaned up for you people. Come on.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Doug Roberts, you have down for number, where are you, Doug? Do you want to speak now or do you want to wait till 7.1? Sure, come on down, Doug. Doug Roberts. Welcome.
Good morning. My name is Doug Roberts. I'm the Nevada partner for Pantonia Development Company, 980 Sand Hill Road, Reno, Nevada. I'm here to talk in support of 7.1, particularly the improvements in North Virginia Street from Stead Boulevard to Panther Drive. Much to everybody's disappointment, we're running out of industrial land in Reno Sparks. I know it's a sad day coming soon, but we really have limited land in the area. And I think what we try to speak about in this community is that these are not just big distribution buildings that have a few workers in them. The whole industrial market across the country is changing. These buildings are used for a lot of different reasons. They're not just a few folks riding forklifts around and picking things up. And some people know this, some people don't. This is the highest per capita distribution market in the country by far. We have more square footage of warehouse per people compared to every other market in the country. So it's a very important part of our industry. And I think some of the things I want to kind of just talk about is there was improvements in North Virginia. What can happen in that corridor are critical to us. We have a pretty massive project called North Valley's Commerce Center. At the end of that build out, we would have paid it almost $4 million in traffic impact fees. And we just like to see some of that money go to the local improvements just to help the community up there. In our anecdotal evidence, we have found that most people that work in our warehouses live there. And so it's a work-live environment. The folks are able to live in the area, go to work quickly, even though we are adding trucks to the traffic issues in the community. At least they can live and work close to where they live. And just another thing to kind of talk about, in the last couple of years, as we built more product in the marketplace, a lot of these tenants are manufacturing. They're not just distribution. Mary's Gone Crackers, Zazzle, Elemental LED, Trademark Global, all manufacture and distribute from these buildings. They're not just there distributing, bringing product in and taking product out. And the other thing I always want to talk about is people want to be near labor. That's one of the most important parts of North Reno is the reason why we see companies come in there and we're continuing to negotiate leases with different companies coming into the area is because of the labor pool and why they want to be there, because they have good quality employees who want to have a good infrastructure to work. So I want to support it. I'm here to do whatever I can to continue that message. We are very active in making sure everybody knows what's coming down the pike so we can all plan for it. Unfortunately, we love this community, been here 20 years. We live here, we work here, we don't plan on leaving, and we want to make the community better. but we want to make sure everybody has a good quality of life, and good, bad, or indifferent people are coming here, and it's going to happen for the foreseeable future. So that's all I had. I appreciate your support and happy to answer questions later. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Okay, next up is Jeff Church. Jeff, come on down.
Did you see more donuts over there?
Yes.
Should I go over and get one?
Yes,
you
you
should.
folks.
I'll go get you one, sir.
Good morning. It is a great morning. My name is Jeff Church. I run a website, renotaxrevolt.com. Although it's a little smoky out there and I'm under a lot of pressure, I heard on the radio that only I can prevent forest fires. So the pressure's on. I had a few thoughts and questions for you. Number one, and it kind of segues with what's we've talked about, the booming economy. I think it's time that RTC had continued foresight to look into a light rail system, possibly Carson to Reno, Spanish Springs, UNR, Stead, Fernley. Question exists legally, what can RTC do to share the tracks to Fernley? It'd be a great idea. We're just booming. I suggest that you look at the San Diego trolley system, where I'm from many years ago, and back circa 1976, they had the foresight to build a trolley system from the border to downtown. Now it ranges all over the county. I want to segue too onto RTC 5. July 1, our taxes went up for gas again. So my question is, if somebody can get back to me in the future, how much did they go up? I hear anywhere from 1.5 cents to 2 cents a gallon. So I'm hoping somebody can get back to me. As you know, gas is about 40 cents cheaper in Fernley and about 35 cents less in Carson. The public is noticing. Coupled with our highest sales tax in the state, highest property tax, WC1 flood tax ballot measure, AB 379 pending property tax increase, we rank #1 nationwide in unaffordable housing. When do we say enough? Under RTC 5 and other Washoe County taxes, my question is, who has the authority to say stop? Well, let's just level it out. I'm not saying rescind it, but stop it. As I read Nevada Revised Statute 373065, and it says, quote, the board may by ordinance impose, end quote, meaning the county commission. So my question is, can the county commission say we're going to level off this tax? And I hope somebody can get back to me on that. Now, as you likely know, WC1 2018 proposes new property tax above the 3% cap. I'm on the formal WC1 opposition committee established by the county commission to write the opposition language. So it's important to know to what degree RTC funds can be used to mitigate flooding. A presentation I heard by RTC shows it can be used to replace bridges. And we do have a website, www.taxyourselfnotme.com, so I invite you to have a look. But the question then is, in addition to bridges, may RTC funds be used to protect the bridges indirectly? For example, to defray the cost of dredging? And could RTC contribute to the Vista Narrows project to prevent the backup and clogging that would indirectly threaten bridges? These are all important questions. The public has a right to know, and I'd sure appreciate a response. Again, how much did our taxes go up, and what can RTC do on the flooding issue? And so I appreciate it, and have a great day. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Church. Amy, could you get together with Mr. Church on the increases? Okay, is there anybody else in the audience wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission and move on to consent items. Anybody want to pull a consent item? Okay, seeing none, look. We have a motion?
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously with those present. Okay, we'll move on to Director Report 4.1, RTC Executive Report. Lee?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To kind of build on Michael's success, where did Michael go? Michael's successful presentation of the recognitions to our partners. The Southeast Connector is open, and I don't know about the rest of y'all, but I drove out there every day for about 5 days just to make sure it was still there. The other thing I did, just anecdotally, was on Saturday after the grand opening, I did go out there and spent about 2.5 hours and drove around. I stopped, I talked to folks, and the cycling community is a big beneficiary. They were out there. They were out there in force. I saw platoons on the road. I saw folks on the multi-use path. The other thing that I noticed out there is, this sounds kind of crazy, but the fragrance, just going out there and noticing that all the white top has been cleared out and we have our new plantings. It's a very fragrant environment on that multi-use path. So anyway, it's open and we have photos, and I think we should all be proud about what has happened. That was a $300 million total project, and one of the largest projects, I think the largest project in the, I'll look at Mr. Jickling because he's our resident historian now. I think it is the largest project in the history of the RTC, street and highway transit or otherwise. When I first got here, I believe 4th Street Station was our largest single construction project at the time. So anyway, I also want to point out on June 12th, we had, on primary election day, we held free transit days. We were able to increase our ridership 8.5% for those days, up to 24,000. On June 21st, the second free ride day, we participated in the annual Dump the Pump. That brought us up to 25,600 rides. So again, once again, 2 free ride days, we saw significant increases in our transit ridership, which is a good thing. I keep hearing that our transit system is faltering, and I keep hearing that our transit system is stagnant, and I think we need to remember that while we do have challenges with respect to our transit system, in many of our core areas, we are seeing some slight increases in ridership, which leads me to my next topic, which is the Virginia Street Bus Rapid Transit Extension Update. As you all know, we have received the finding of no significant impact. We are now wrapping up final design for that project. We've engaged the Midtown Merchants Association to discuss with them. We heard some interesting ideas for public outreach, which causes me both pride and concern. The pride component is that these businesses are going to embrace construction. They want to hold festivals during construction. They want to really invite people to come down to embrace construction. I even heard that some of the venues may actually develop construction worker costumes for their employees during the period of construction. So I'm torn. I'm glad to see that the community is going to embrace construction. But I also want to remind everyone that safety needs to be our primary mission, and we certainly want to make it a safe experience for everyone. In today's agenda, as compared to what you'll see in August, there's going to be a major change. The major change is you will no longer see a specialized monthly report on the Southeast Connector, because it's done. There'll be no need to have that on the agenda, but I do believe we will begin with a Virginia Street agenda item just to keep everyone up to speed on how things are going, no matter how small or how big that particular item is. We all know from the Southeast Connector, we've had some months where that report went by in 10 seconds or less. We also know there were some months where that report maybe took an hour. So I want us to get focused on Virginia Street and be ready to embrace the change that's going to be coming. I also want to point out, I was very pleased to see Senator Heller at our grand opening for the Southeast Connector. I was also very pleased to see that Senator Heller is embracing the Virginia Street project. We are in the process right now of working through developing, or Senator Heller has committed to us to get a meeting with Secretary Chao. Again, with respect to our last fund source for the project, the Capital Investment Grant, it's in an approved DOT budget. The money's ready to go. We know from meeting with Senate staff and House staff that $40 million, the last step that needs to be achieved is the execution of a grant agreement. Mr. Heller has committed to me personally that he will get that meeting with Secretary Chao, and we will then have the last piece of funding in place and get that project done. So we will keep everyone posted on when that meeting happens, and hopefully it happens soon. I do want to point out, I guess the summer months are the months for completed projects. Last Friday, we held a rededication of the Villanova Regional Transit Operations and Maintenance Center to honor Jerry Hall, RTC's first executive director, a gentleman I met actually in 1989 when we came up here from Las Vegas to see how Reno and Sparks established a transit system because we didn't have one. So Jerry was a great mentor to us, and I'm glad to see that we have rededicated that center to his tenure as the executive director while we were here. Last but not least, since she's out of the room, and there's a reason for that, on Monday, Amy Cummings, Amy's been promoted. She's going to be the Deputy Executive Director for the RTC. She's going to assist me as basically a Chief Operations Officer, helping cut across lines and boundaries to make sure our internal products and our internal operations really comport with making sure we meet our external obligations with respect to our engineering program, our transit operations program, our administration finance program, and also the planning program. Now, one of the things I think that makes Amy a very distinguished individual for this is not just her 8 years at the RTC, but it's the fact that she's helped set the strategic objectives of this agency through the planning process, and I cannot think of anyone better who can help us now flip sides and get more involved in implementation. So I want to congratulate Amy on that, and I'm looking forward to her leadership in helping bring all the different pieces and parts of our agency together in a enhanced fashion so we can better deliver our program to our partners. With that, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my Executive Director's report.
Ms. Jordan.
Thank you very much. Two things. I did want to comment, and we do get some, blowback about our bus system and lack of it or frustrations with it. We always have to be cognizant of trying to continually improve that. The bus drivers are a huge component of that. The gentleman that won the award, that's a big deal. That's really neat for him to win that award. I did want to say, on the positive note, I happened to be at the food court at Meadowood Mall recently, and there was a gentleman there, a senior, and he happened to be reading a book, and I happened to notice that he had a bus pass as his bookmark. And so I struck up a conversation with him and asked him what he thought of the bus system and riding the bus. He informed me that he had been riding the bus for 18 years and that he couldn't be more happy with it. That he rode it up and down the Virginia Street corridor to get to where he wanted to go and needed to go, and he was thrilled to have that service, and he couldn't have said enough good things. So, I always like to say that bad news takes the fast lane while good news takes the scenic route, and I just wanted to pass along some good feedback that we've got on our bus system. The other thing is, with regards to the Virginia Street corridor, I know that you've had a meeting with the Midtown Merchants Association. Not everybody in Midtown or on the Virginia Street corridor is a member of that. When will SNC begin the door-to-door notifications? I know they're going to start their underground, and I know we're waiting for the last piece of the federal funding, but I am very concerned about trying to do some big communication splash and it coming right before they start digging up the roads. The sooner the better with the door-to-door interaction. When does that start?
Before Michael starts on that, I forgot to mention SNC was with us at that meeting. They're committed to working with each and every property owner and tenant up and down that street. They have already been in contact. I actually got a comment from somebody out there who appreciated the flowers they sent. So I would argue or point out that I think that engagement is already underway. Michael, you may want to go ahead and give a more structured overview of when those meetings will occur.
Thank you, Lee. Michael Moreno, RTC Public Affairs Manager. We are putting the final elements together for that outreach to begin within the coming week. And we are going to be going to the Midtown Merchants Association membership, meeting with their membership on July 30th. And then we will also begin the rollout to go door to door to all the stakeholders along Midtown to let them know what's kind of going on. We'll start initiating our stakeholder updates here in the coming week as well, with information about the utility relocation activities that will be starting in September. And so you'll see a lot more profile of the start of the Virginia Street project through social media, through media releases, newspaper stories, and more importantly, engagement with the stakeholders in Midtown.
So within the next week, will be more of the official hitting all the media outlets?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I was trying to get at. Okay, thank you.
Just so you know, we're going to be doing some feature stories with a couple of the news outlets, just to really raise the profile, because what we find is we haven't really been able to connect with everyone who touches this project, but through no fault of our trying to do that. But we're hoping that the profile with these news stories will be elevated so that people will reach out to us, ask questions, get information, and more importantly, sign up to get those weekly updates that we will be initiating in September.
Perfect, thank you.
So, and I wish Amy wasn't so efficient because she left the room. Here she comes right now. And to answer Mr. Church's questions, but I've been in contact with Lee and also talked to Amy about her promotion. I can't think of a better person to take this position and help us lead the RTC for the many more years. So, Amy, I've already told you this, but congratulations. I love the fact that you accepted that position, and it's nothing but positive for the RTC. Thank you. Everybody give Amy a hand.
Yeah.
Did you want to say a few words, or?
Yeah, I think so.
I think you should.
Yeah, speech.
Thank you, Amy Cummings, Director of Planning, and I am
You got
so
to turn your microphone on because that's part of the gig now.
And you have a new title starting Monday, so.
starting Monday. Today, I'm still the Director of Planning. I'm so excited to be able to start and to serve the RTC in a new capacity and to be able to work on new projects and support the agency and continue to work with the community. So I'm just very appreciative for this opportunity.
And you'll be doing 2 jobs starting Monday, right?
Yes.
Correct. I think you can do that. Thanks, Amy.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Mr. McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I've wanted to thank the staff and SNC on the efforts that they've made on the Virginia Street construction project, the advanced efforts that have gone in there, and I know talking to a few of the local businesses down there that they have a lot more secure feeling than the businesses on 4th Street ever had, and the other issue that they know there's going to be a lot of impact on their community, but they have also worked with the RTC and the contractor on figuring out ways to address those issues, which is something that never happened on the 4th and Pratercon project, which might say something about the delivery method that I hate so much. So, but I think that I have an assurance that we'll have a better, smoother running project than the one that never ends. And I know that we continue to get complaints from merchants along the 4th Street corridor. We've lost 3 businesses on 4th Street since that project started because they can't keep their doors open because of business. And we've got other people there that are talking about shutting down until at least after it completes because it doesn't pay to keep the lights on because there's not access to their businesses. It took me 2 days to find my way to a business down there last week because of the roundabout detours and the blockages of the roads, places that it says you can get through that you can't get through, driveways that are opened up that you can't get through. And so it's been very frustrating to the businesses over there that have been dealing with this for over a year, continuously for over a year, and for the people that are trying to patronize those businesses down there and can't get access to them. So I'm positive we're going to have a better result on Virginia Street given the efforts that we've made leading into that project.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we'll move on to the federal report. Mr. Gibson?
Mr. Chairman, on the federal report, let me start by saying we had the Federal Transit Administration here Tuesday, and they spent, probably about half to 3/4 of the day here going through a complete project review, including Virginia Street, 4th Prater, the Villanova Maintenance Facility, the electric bus program. I'm pleased to report that their overview of our projects, our project delivery, was exceptional. They're especially pleased with the 4th Prater project and how that project is progressing through our schedule. They are also very pleased with the Virginia Street project. They think we have a strong financial plan. They believe also that our delivery experience is going to count very heavily with respect to obtaining and signing and executing the capital investment grant for Virginia Street. To come back to some of the more specific rifle shot approaches we're taking with our delegation, we did have a letter signed by every member of the delegation encouraging Senator Chao to execute the grant agreement. I think it's significant to highlight the fact that the entire Southern Nevada delegation in the House of Representatives signed that letter. Sometimes, as we all know, the Southern Nevadans may or may not deal with things, but this time they rallied around the idea that executing a grant of that magnitude and also sustaining and maintaining the legal requirements of the appropriations bills to spend the money was important, and I'm deeply appreciative to all of the members of our delegation, from Mr. Amadei to include Ms. Rosen, Congresswoman Titus, Mr. Kewen, along with, there's one more down there I'm forgetting, and also our 2 senators. So anyway, that is also a precursor to Mr. Heller helping to arrange that meeting with Secretary Chao. The Capital Investment Grant Program, something that we're working on right now. We got what's called a Dear Colleague letter. We love these at the RTC, the federal. It's not enough that there's all these statutory requirements out there. They have to send us a Dear Colleague letter every now and then to express some of their concerns about how they would like to see our program tweaked at the margins in order to help deliver or at least achieve administration goals. A couple things I think are noteworthy about the Virginia Street project. One is the fact that we have a public-private partnership, maybe not from a financial perspective so much as it is with respect to our public engagement and involvement. The strong partnership with the property owners, the Midtown Merchants Association, and the University of Nevada, Reno, as well as City of Reno, are all an important element that shows that donations and time and effort are being made to help deliver that project. I also think it's important that as Mr. McKenzie has correctly pointed out, we have an innovative delivery process in place. We're going to take our lessons learned from 4th Prater. We're going to apply those to this and help move that project faster. I would note for the consent agenda today, we did get our third-party utility agreements approved. Those are going off to the FTA as soon as this meeting is concluded, as well as executing a utility relocation construction agreement with SNC to get that going. So we will continue to work with the FTA. We're going to continue to make our pitch with respect to making sure that we are moving forward. At the federal level, there continues to be discretionary grant programs made available. The bus and bus facilities is one example. Autonomous vehicles and the associated infrastructure is another critical element. The item I asked to be held today, or that was held today, item 6.2, with respect to LIDAR, actually what we're going to bring back for the commission is a more comprehensive overview of not just traffic engineering solutions using LIDAR technology, but something a little more holistic with regard to our partnership with the university in developing autonomous vehicles, the associated infrastructure, where we are with looking at autonomous vehicle technology for our bus system, as well as looking at how LIDAR technology fits in more fully with traffic safety. Surprise, surprise, there's kind of one arm of the university that doesn't talk to the other arm of the university. I think part of it is they're over there in that nice campus and get lost in their big thoughts. There's some other items in the report, but I think the laser focus of at least myself, my senior staff, and the commission needs to be on getting that capital investment grant signed, sealed, and delivered so we can move forward as we can with the Virginia Street project. That project is something I'm very personally proud of, and we need to see that project delivered. With that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions or comments? Ms. Jordan?
Thank you very much. Two things. The LiDAR technology, of course, I have particular interest in this, in the intersection north of the university where a UNR student was killed. When are we doing that presentation?
We're going to do it next month, and I'm glad you asked that because we're going through a list of intersections, and I'm going to go through that list to make sure we're doing technology applications that meet with safety objectives of the commission. So that's part of what we want to make sure. We've got sort of one side of the university that's looking at LiDAR to be an intended next step for our autonomous vehicle research project, but we also have a bunch of traffic engineers working on LiDAR to improve safety. We want to bring those two together. So that's what we're going to
Do they specifically address some of the concerns at this intersection I'm referring to?
They are, that I will have to answer next month. They're looking at the technology, though, that could lead to that, as well as an associated investment we may make in additional LiDAR equipment that would go to a whole host of intersections.
Okay, and the reason I asked is because I think the family would like to
I know.
probably be in attendance to see that.
I'm perfectly aware of our need to look at the Socrates McCarran, and that's kind of why we held the item today.
The other thing, which was a good reminder on the Virginia Street corridor, which we can learn from some of the issues with the Fourth Prater project, I did get from a constituent that lives on 4th Street that has been impacted, and she does have disabilities, some of the issues she has encountered during this process, and it is a pretty thorough kind of punch list that I think we can learn from and maybe improve upon with Virginia. So I say that on the record to remind myself to give that to you. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, we'll move on to the end monthly update. Mr. Malfabon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I wanted to mention to the board that we recently promoted Thor Dyson. You might have had him come up to answer some operational questions as the district engineer here in Reno for NDOT. Is promoted to the Assistant Director of Operations position. So we'll have to fill his district engineer position, but you can still use the regular contacts to get anything addressed if you see some operational issues with maintenance or signage, striping, trash removal, those things like that the district maintenance forces deal with. We also have next week kick off the second series of meetings associated with I-11 and the Northern Nevada Alternatives Analysis. So this is part of our planning and environmental linkage process, PEL. The idea is to take a larger set of corridors that we're looking for I-11 alternatives and eventually rank it based on certain criteria such as economic development, freight movement, safety, some of the infrastructure that's out there on some of these alternative corridors. Once we get that reduced set of alternative corridors, then we'll look at the environmental clearance process, whether it's an EIS or is something that has to happen later. But this reduces the set of alternatives to look at, and the first meeting is July 24th in Carson City. You can attend or watch it on Facebook Live. But then there will be a meeting the next day in Reno, as well as 2 meetings on the 26th, one in Fernley in the morning and one in Fallon, one in Hawthorne on August 7th, and then Tonopah and Las Vegas follow. So the second round of meetings, we're looking forward to that to identify these reduced set of alternatives to the public and get comment. Arizona DOT and Nevada DOT were able to visit our delegation this week and talk about I-11 and the need to have more funding for that to go on and advance into the environmental clearance phase. The Arizona DOT talked about what they're doing on their side with their tiered EIS approach. So they're doing their clearance all the way across their state, all the way to the Mexico border. In Nevada, we're looking at a similar approach, but using the planning and environmental linkage, the PEL process, to reduce the set of corridor alternatives. The Spaghetti Bowl Express is what we're branding that first phase of Spaghetti Bowl. We received pre-qualification submittals from interested design-build teams. And then I'll receive a short list of the recommended teams next week to approve. The funding for this project is anticipated to be bonding, and it's subject to legislative approval of NDOT's biennial budget request. Since we have a bonding capacity and we have a good bond rating from the rating agencies, AAA from Standard & Poor's, I don't think there'll be any issues with legislative approval of this. And a certain amount of bonding capacity is also being set aside for projects in Las Vegas, so we won't have those types of issues from the legislature about fairness and equity and transportation spending for this additional bonding capacity that NDOT has. NDOT is doing a road safety assessment this week. We conducted one, go out there, drive Mount Rose Highway in daytime and nighttime conditions, observe some of the issues that we have with traffic and safety, look at the safety statistics along that corridor of Mount Rose Highway. Then we'll coordinate with Washoe County staff and Commissioner Lucy for a public meeting later this year to talk about some of the recommendations from that road safety assessment on Mount Rose Highway. I was able to review that with Thor Dyson about a month ago, and a lot of traffic there, a lot of development going on, so we want to make sure that we're prepared for that and get those improvements scheduled in our work program. Wanted to thank the RTC and FHWA for their efforts in advancing the Spaghetti Bowl project. As I've said last month, that I've never seen a project advance so rapidly in our state, and it's really because of our partners at RTC and Federal Highways working with us to get that project going and to get it funded and under construction as soon as we can. That concludes the NDOT Director's report.
Okay, any questions or comments? Thank you, Director. Appreciate it. Okay, so we'll move on to 5.1, Public Transportation and Operations. Acknowledge receipt of a report pertaining to the development of a draft request for an RFP for operations and maintenance. Mr. David Jinkling, how are you?
Very well, Commissioner. Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, David Jickling, Director of Public Transportation for the RTC. This particular item is kind of a twofold item. First, just to talk about the RFP development process that we've been trying to keep you informed on, because this is a very big part of what we're doing in our future in transit here. The second is to introduce some folks from MV. There's been some changes there at their leadership levels, and we want to give them an opportunity to introduce themselves and talk with you a little bit about their vision for transit services here in our community as well. I thought I'd just start real quick by thanking Commissioner Jardin for the compliments that we don't very often hear, and I love your analogy of the fast lane and the scenic lane, and I couldn't agree with you more. And certainly we try and advocate that transit is the scenic way to travel. So thank you for those kind words, and glad to hear that. This particular item starts with an industry review, which I think we talked to you a little bit about, where we basically reach out to all of the operators, private operators who operate transit for public agencies throughout the country. They're pretty well known to us through the industry. There's not that many, in fact, pretty much just 7. And all 7 have expressed great interest in working for the RTC and expressed interest in coming to this community. So we invited them to come and meet with us individually. We spent a couple of hours with their leadership teams to talk about just the evolution of transit in the industry nationwide, in fact, worldwide, because most of these organizations are international operators. We had 7 who showed up. First Transit, who used to have our contract, Keolis, MV Transit, our current contractor for fixed route, National Express, Ride MTM, who operates our paratransit service, RepDev and Transdev all came, and basically we talked about the items there that you see below, really everything affecting the delivery of service, innovation, economic challenges, evolving fleets, incentives and disincentives, maintenance of our facilities, all those things were on the table. And we really heard a lot of common emerging themes, many of which we certainly already suspected and felt pretty confident with, but a lot of these things helped just reaffirm in our minds the direction we thought we should be going. So what I wanted to just talk about very briefly is some of the takeaways, the things that we want to make sure we bring to your attention that we would be including in the RFP. And we will be coming back to you next month with a recommendation to issue the RFP. So this is really your chance here, your final chance to give us some feedback if there's anything different you'd like us to address or approach. But as we've talked to you before, I think in December we came to you with a report from the School of Business at the University of Nevada about the economic challenges of a full, low unemployment, full employment, and the base wage issues. And we are continuing to see with MV and nationwide challenges to recruiting and retaining employees, particularly bus operators, but also mechanics and utility workers. MV has tried to address this over the past 6 months or year. They hired a full-time recruiter. They've really redoubled their efforts by offering retention bonuses and hiring bonuses. They unilaterally raised the starting wage for drivers from $13 to $14. But throughout all of this, it really has not made the difference that is necessary for us to be able to operate all the service that we show in our schedules. We're frankly missing trips, and that's caused by when there simply is not an operator available to drive that particular route at that time. That's a real concern to us and to our operator. We've been working with MV diligently on this, but we started implementing liquidated damages that are in our contract to really bring home the seriousness of this issue to them. And we've imposed $375,000 in liquidated damages over the past few months. I don't want to suggest that's what's caught MV's eye, but they recognize that this is a critical and important thing for them to be able to address. And so they've been looking at really this wage issue. And again, as I mentioned, this is across the country. Agencies are having to unilaterally raise wages to keep employees. And MV has looked at this in some detail and has concluded that they need to implement approximately a 20% across the board wage increase to be able to attract the kind of employees and retain the kind of employees we need to operate our bus system, as well as maintain the bus system. So this is a proposal that MV has brought to us that would affect all of the hourly workers here in our contract here in Reno, Sparks area. As if they do that, we've agreed to waive the labor liquidated damages through the remainder of the contract, the next 11 months of the contract, recognizing that to bring in new employees, train them, get them out on the road is at least a 4 to 6 week process. So the impact of this additional wage offering, will take some time to manifest itself, and frankly could still not be enough if the market continues to do what it's doing. But we think MV is doing the right thing, and we applaud them for that. There will be some impacts to the RTC in the next round of the RFP that I'll talk about in just a moment. But I thought at this point I'd like to introduce Tom Egan, who is the Chief Operating Officer for MV, and ask him to just talk a little bit about his company and what their approach is going to be here. So,
David, before you speak, let me just ask you a question.
Sure.
If I wanted to be a driver and the wage is $14, is it $14 as a starting wage, or is that if you've been there 10 years, you're still making $14?
No, that's the starting wage.
And what do they go up to?
I want to say go up to about $24 an hour,
Okay.
but I don't have that in front of me, and I don't recall exactly.
Okay, and how long would it take them to get to $24?
6 years, maybe, something like
Okay.
that.
All right.
5 or 6 years.
Thank you.
Yeah. Generally, just so you know, I mean, obviously, these are their employees, this is their labor issues, and we, as both an agency and obviously you as the board, try and stay as removed from that as can be.
Right,
So I'm not
right.
as intimately familiar with some of those issues, but I'd like to have Mr. Egan talk to you and tell you what his company's doing.
Okay.
Good afternoon, good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Tom Egan. I'm the new President and Chief Operating Officer of MV Transportation. I've been at MV about 3 months now. I'm part of a sweeping set of leadership changes that we're making at MV, all the way from the board level to a new CEO, myself as a new COO, and down through our operating levels in order to transform the company. And so at MV, we really focus on customer service and, our core business of fixed route, paratransit, school bus, and campus shuttle is our core businesses. We're unlike our competitors, we're U.S. focused. We plan to be mainly U.S. focused. We don't plan on expanding outside the U.S. We think that's our sweet spot. And part of the transformation that the company is going through is the fact that we've gotten away from some of the customer service things that we've done that have been the 43-year history of our company. And over the past 4 or 5 years, we've struggled to keep up with the changes in the transit industry and the types of things that we need to do in order to continue to provide superior service to organizations like the RTC and others. And so I'm here as well as the leadership, new leadership changes within MV to make those changes and get back to our core, which is superior customer service underpinned by the best safety track record in the industry. At the board level and all the way down through the leadership of MV, we're painfully aware that we have not satisfied the requirements of what we committed to you for the service levels that we'd deliver to the RTC. For that, I apologize, but I'm here to fix it. And so when I started with the company 3 months ago and started to get out into the business, I quickly realized about 30 days in that in this particular operation, we didn't have the right leadership. And I looked at, kind of how it was operating and determined we need to make immediate leadership changes. We've done that. Harley Kempter is our new general manager for the division. He's in the audience today. Above me, above Harley, we've brought in a new leader, Jeff Bain. Jeff reports to me. I'm the new COO, so I'm very confident that within for the leadership that we put in, being Harley here as the GM, Jeff Bain in the region, and myself as COO, we have the right leadership team to fix this service. And so leadership changes was number one, have the right leadership. Number two was that we realize, as David spoke about, across the industry, we're getting enormous pressure on wages. And so for the population of employees that we would hire as operators, utility workers, and even mechanics at some level, that population 5 years ago didn't have a lot of choices of employment. They have many, many choices today because at the wage scales that we pay, there are many companies competing for that employee. And so that pressure exists not only here in Reno, it exists across the U.S. and probably outside the U.S. That's not my area of expertise. And so we really need to address that situation. So we actually have made several attempts, as David talked about. So over the past couple of years, we've done bonuses for the employees, we've done wage increases, we've done employee engagement activities. But to this point in time, none of that has been enough to fix the service. As a matter of fact, as MV, we're incurring wage cost hundreds of thousands of dollars more than we ever bid when we started this initial contract. And so that was a challenge, how we figure out how we balance that. But getting into it, I realized that we will never fix it without another wage increase. So as David spoke, today I'm announcing that we're going to do a 20% wage increase for all the hourly workers. And that wage increase will be effective August. And it will not be 20% across the board. What we'll do is we'll target that wage increase where the problem is greatest. But also, as you well know, if you do a wage increase in one wage category, what you don't want to do is leave other job levels out, because then that becomes a problem with morale across the division. So what will happen is that we'll likely do up to a 30% wage increase for entry level coming into the organization, new operators, new mechanics, new utility workers. And then that 30% will start to phase out as the tenure grows. So by the time you get to the top of the wage scale, it could be in the 10 to 15% range. But I do want to note that on July 1st, we actually did an increase at the top of the wage schedule for the 33 most tenured operators. And so they've already received a substantial wage increase already this year. And so we feel that the right way to go about this is really to get the highest wage increases into the bottom of the scale, which is where we're really struggling, to get entry level in and to get operators that have 0 to 5 years experience to be able to retain those. So that's where the wage increase will be targeted. We feel very, very confident that will make an enormous difference. So we'll be paying wages. If you look at the national average for wages for operators, utility workers, and mechanics, and you look at what you would expect to pay in this area, we'll be paying much more than what is expected to pay. So we'll be paying at the very top percentile. And really the goal is to improve the service, right? So we won't want to have any more missed routes. And we want to make sure that we're fully providing the service that you expect and your ridership expects. And as David noted, in order to do that, we need to make sure we have operators in the seat, driving the buses, delivering the service very safely to your ridership. And so with that, I want to personally thank the RTC for working with us. We really appreciate you working with us to waive the wage-related and driver-related LDs. And then we're going to commit the dollars to make the wage increases. And we really think that will make the difference that we need to make. So I want to thank you all for your business. I want to thank you for your time today to let me speak. I want to assure you that as a company, we're totally committed all the way from the board level, which is aware of the problem that we're having here in Reno, all the way down through the lowest levels of the corporation, that we need to fix the service that we have here, and we need to commit that we're going to do that in an expeditious manner.
Mr. McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I need to get some clarification on something I think I heard you say, because our staff report says you're going to increase all wages by 20%, but I thought I heard you say that you were only going to increase the people with 1 to 5 years experience by 20%, that you weren't going to increase the...
Yeah, let me clarify. So if you take the total pool of compensation that MV pays the hourly workers, we're going to increase that pool by 20%, but we're going to distribute it differently depending on if you're the most tenured versus the least tenured. The problem that we have today, the tenured employees are not leaving, right? They're making $24 to $26 an hour. It's a wage that's very, very competitive. We just gave them an increase on July 1st. It affected 85 of the most tenured operators. So they've already had a substantial wage increase already this year. And so where the problem really is at the lower tenured employees. So getting people in the door and wanting to do this job. And also once you get them in, you train them, they're running for a few years, getting them to stay. And so what David and I spoke about is the best way to do this is to pay a little more at the bottom end, where they may be a little lower than the market is demand at that end, and then pay less at the top end, given that those are not the people that are leaving, and also given the fact that they've already received a wage increase this year that others did not get.
Good luck dealing with that.
Look, understand,
Good,
right?
Because I'm afraid you're going to lose a bunch of tenured operators. You're going to lose a bunch of them, because I can tell you right now, the $24 an hour is not high pay for somebody that's got a CDL.
Understood, sir. We will be paying the top end, so they're going to be getting something. So generally, they'll get 10 to 15% more, and so they'll generally get $240 to $350 an hour at the top end.
Ms. Jordan.
Thank you very much. Thank you for that clarification. I had that as well. And in just doing the quick math, so someone making $14 an hour is going to go up to about $16.80, which equates to about $4,300 more per year for them. And that's a nice bump, and that might get you some more folks in the door, because that's a more reasonable starting salary. Someone at the higher end, $24 an hour, is almost going to get a $10,000 a year raise if they in fact got that 20% as well, and that's pretty substantial. I know in my years of human resource experience, I did find that those on the higher end of tenure in the scale responded more to a top-of-scale bonus program than necessarily an hourly rate increase. But you're right, you got to get them in the door. And I know you're struggling with that, as many people are. So I think that's necessary. I'm glad to see you have some of that flexibility built in there, because tenured employees have different things that incentivize them. And it's not always just the increase in their hourly rate. It could be something else, and getting creative at that top end of the scale without blowing your scale out of the water is a very smart thing to do. And bonuses, I will say, from having done it, bonuses in particular based upon performance, that can be substantial if they have great performance, can be a very effective tool for those tenured employees. But
And we're also
that's your
doing some
job.
of that.
But anyway, I appreciate the presentation. Thank you.
Anything else?
Just one thing, and I'm definitely not telling you how to run your business or anything, but I was in business for 42 years, and wage increases were a short-term fix. It seemed like and I don't know the steps, but if they made $14 coming in and they can get all the way to 24, it might pay to get those couple of those steps removed. So instead of, and I'm guessing 6 steps, it goes down to 4 steps, so they can realize those higher wages sooner. And that seems to help. I know that years ago, when you were offering benefits, if you offered them a 10% or 10-cent increase in hourly, or some kind of a benefit, the young people would say that take the 10 cents, when the right way would be the benefit. So I think that you might want to take a look at that.
Yeah, we will, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. David.
I'll get to it in a minute. David, so what I'd like you to do now is circle back to the RFP development. I appreciate the representative from MV's comments, but I think this item really needs to focus on what you and the staff are thinking about with respect to the RFP.
Absolutely, that was a pause. So one of the things clearly that will occur as a result of this change is that as we look at that base wage, that's one of the issues that in the past we haven't felt compelled to put in an RFP. But what we and the rest of the industry nationwide had been experiencing was this, essentially what was happening was that costs were being saved by really coming down on the labor end of things. And in our paratransit RFP that we issued 18 months ago or so, 2 years ago, we put a minimum base wage in there in order to require all proposers to address what we saw as the emerging trend. We're recommending that we go ahead and do that as well in this particular RFP. And clearly, the changes that MV is proposing will essentially set that base wage. And as we look forward in terms of our financial projections, we're anticipating that this is likely we're going to see a 20 to 30% increase in costs of providing the service starting in 2020. What does that mean? Well, right now with our financial projections of about 3.8% or so sales tax growth annually, that we will need to cut service in order to provide the wages that are going to be required to operate a transit system. That service reductions could be offset somewhat by the board taking the action to move all of the available sales tax revenues to the transit program. And by that I mean we have, as you know, there's that 1/8% sales tax that was passed in 2008 that has been historically split between the street and highway program and the transit program. It certainly can all be moved into the transit program. So we're looking at our financial projections and seeing what those impacts might be on both the street and highway program, obviously, as well as the transit program.
David, could I jump in here? A
Please.
couple questions.
Yeah.
Stephanie, would you come up? I want to ask you a couple questions. So we've got percentages, 20 to 30% increase in wages starting in FY20. What does that amount to in money?
the actual total increases in costs, I don't have those in front of me, I'm sorry. I can get those back to you. Did you?
Okay.
Oh, he brought it? Oh, good. Oh, yeah, okay, great, thank you, good job. $2.3 million for the
That's
first
a little,
year.
that puts it in perspective.
Mhm.
Also, you know, the 1/8 flexible sales, and I've always voted no against that because that is a blowback from everybody else that's not in transportation. So to say that we'll have to use the 8th, I don't know if we're going to get there with that at all. That's, how much money is that?
$5 million.
So we're talking 7-point-something million dollars.
Well, the cost of the increase is 2.3.
Okay.
So the first year, we'll be able to absorb that, if this actually happens, absorb that through all the reserves that we've gained in the boom in the economy, okay? So we had the recession, we got our reserves back.
Okay, so the total amount of the 1%, or the 8th, is 5 million, so we're talking another, well, what do we give them now out of it? We don't flex money over all the time.
Yeah, we do. We give 1/16 to the transit side and 1/16.
But the 1/16 that goes to construction and everything else,
Right,
we don't flex that over all the time.
No.
Yeah, that goes to
Right
board of the
now,
board.
the board has split that equally between the two programs. So
Mhm.
what David is asking in this agenda or in the future is to take all of that, the entire 1/8, which would equate to an
5 million.
additional $5 million. So right now, it's, in the future, it'd be about $5 million for street and highway, $5 million for public transit, and then
That's
so
crazy.
all $10 million would go to the public transportation
Mhm.
side to
Any-
help pay for this future service.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mr. McKenzie?
The wage increase alone is 2.3 million?
Well, this is the 20 to 30% projected overall increase in the contract costs we're expecting. So some of that is certainly the wage amounts that we're talking about here that MV is going to be implementing. But simply just looking at, as we project future costs of providing the services and the budget for the public transportation program, we're seeing a 20 to 30% is our projection of what the bids, the proposals will come in over what we're currently paying.
But not all of that is wages. That
No.
full 2.3 isn't
Correct,
wages. That's the
correct.
increase in contract.
That's overhead, that's everything.
That's your fuel costs and everything else.
Well, the fuel we pay for, so that's not in that figure.
Okay.
Okay, go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, Stephanie, let's think about bringing back a chart that shows how you would, if you had to, draw down the 1/16 and phase that in. Because I think, you know, I'm just doing some quick math. If you said the 1/16 generates 5 million, but you need 2.3 million, but you're still having growth in the 1/16 that goes to transit, just how much of that are you going to need? So I think it would be worthwhile to have those types of numbers developed and show the commission.
So the other things that we're looking at, obviously, is contract term. The current contract is an 8-year contract. It was 4 years with 2 2-year options. We're recommending that this become a 10-year contract with a 4-year base and 3 2-year options. No surprise, generally, the responders to this type of a RFP have indicated that for them to really invest and be part of the community and to make their numbers work, the longer the contract, the better. But with the uncertainty of the future, which is part of what we're dealing with right now in the 8-year contract, we want to make sure that these option years are structured in such a way that we, the RTC, certainly have an opportunity to not award them. But we're looking to see if there's any ways in which the potential for revisiting some of the assumptions in those options can be made as well within contract regulations and laws and requirements that give both the contractor and the RTC some flexibility to better adjust for whatever the future may hold. So those are some things we're still working through there. Facilities, of course, right now the way it works is that the contractors occupy buildings and maintain assets that the RTC owns and buys through our grant programs. And we think that works pretty well. But one of the pain points for both the contractor and the RTC sometimes is looking at major repairs and trying to figure out when is that RTC's responsibility versus the contractor's, since they are our buildings and our facilities, we feel that that number, which is currently $7,500, we think it makes more sense to lower that to $2,500. So any big component like a heater or something like that in a building, a furnace, maybe a lift, things like that that need to be replaced, we would be responsible for that. That takes some of the uncertainty of aging of facilities and everything out of the equation for the contractors to try and bid on, and gives us, we think, a little more control over these very expensive amenities and facilities that we own. The liquidated damages is certainly a sensitive and controversial sort of discussion for everyone. Obviously, contractors don't want to see liquidated damages, and we think that they have a place and a purpose as well. Currently, we have 28 different categories of liquidated damages in our contract, and I can tell you from simply a staffing, contract management, performance monitoring sort of standpoint, these can be very problematic. They can be difficult. Some are very clear-cut, others are pretty gray. We don't have to implement LDs by the contract, but we try to where we think it's appropriate. The reality is all of the proposers had told us that, we essentially bid in the assumption that we're going to be paying liquidated damages into the costs that we bid. And so if you bring some of those down and commit to collaboration and cooperation and really working together as a team, we think you can get better results than trying to just hammer us with liquidated damages. And we think that's the case, and so we are recommending reducing the LDs from 28 to 9, as well as adding to that some actual incentives. And I'm going to talk about those in a little bit here. And the incentives would go to the employees here. We don't want any incentives that might be paid going to the corporate folks, but we want them going to the employees here in the Reno-Sparks area who are delivering the service and getting the job done. So what do these look like, the 9? Things such as on-time performance, that's pretty fundamental. Is the bus where it needs to be according to the schedule? And we're looking at a 90% on-time performance at time points with an incentive of $1,000 for each percentage point above 90%. That, quite frankly, would be a challenge to attain, but it is attainable, as well as a $1,000 LD for each point that falls below 88% on time. So that's one of the keys to using a transit system, is looking at the schedule and knowing that your bus is going to be there. Complaints, clearly customer service, as Tom had mentioned, and we've been working very hard with MV and our contractors on, is really managing these complaints, providing professional service, having the drivers behave in a professional manner, and we want to watch those very carefully. And so we measure that by complaints per 20,000 passengers per month. And basically, we're going to give them an incentive for $500 if they can be below that, and then $500 penalty if they're over that. Accidents, you can see what we've got in there. I don't think I'm going to go through each of these in this level of detail, but clearly accidents, safety are really important factors for providing confidence in our passengers and our community that our service is first rate and a good way of getting around the town and the community. Key positions, this is gets a little bit at the labor issues we're dealing with, but we will identify key management positions that on the ground here in the Reno-Sparks area that need to be filled. And we will hold them to that, and we will fine them if they are unable to maintain those positions fully staffed. Preventative maintenance, keeping the buses operating, that's a big one. Largely, that's an easy one. They know they have to keep these buses in service and maintained, and it's in their best interest to do so. Largely, we have good success there, but we still believe that's an important one to keep in there. Complaints, we are going to be tracking those. That gets to the other issue I mentioned. Accident reporting and then accident frequency. I think all of you are out in the community and occasionally see things with buses broken down or maybe something that looks like an accident. Our goal is to know about that before you do and be able to inform you if it's something more serious so that you're not hearing about it on the news or seeing it yourselves. So it's very important that we have a communication with our contractor on accidents and particularly significant accidents. When we evaluate the proposals, we're heavily focusing the weighting on technical qualifications. What I alluded to earlier, and this is similar to what we did in the paratransit, is price we think is important, but we don't want price to drive this. We really would like to stay away from awarding to the low bid because low bid is not necessarily the best bid. We really want to focus on the technical qualifications, and I've highlighted here the key aspects of what those are, and certainly hope that you support that evaluation approach. As I mentioned at the beginning, we hope to release this RFP next month after bringing it to you for final review and approval at your August meeting. This is the schedule of key events that would go through. We would be awarding this through you in February of next year, and then the service would start in July. It would give the contractor that is awarded about 3 months to bring in their new team, go through the process of reviewing existing employees and bringing them on board and getting their training and everything in place to be up and running by July 1 of 2019. So with that, I would answer any questions that you may have on this process and this RFP.
Questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, if I may. Thank you. Mr. Jickling, this was a discussion about the RFP and what we're going to do and how we're going to go out and approach the RFP, and I appreciate the extensive detail that you've put into the presentation today. However, I am disappointed that MV even had an opportunity to speak today. We have a number of providers here. Even though MV is our current provider, we have a number of providers that would have the opportunity to bid on this project. And I felt that any information that could have been relayed by MV or needed to be related by MV should have been done in a separate board item or agenda item to talk about their current operations, but not an RFP. From here on forward, if there is an RFP discussion that goes on that has every operator, as we've listed Keolis, we've listed First Transit, National Express, RIDE, Transdev Services, they should be offered the same amount of time and service because they weren't today. And so if there's ever a time when we need to outline a process or why we're doing something, that needs to be handled by you and staff and then the director. But going forward, that should never happen again, from my opinion. I'm frustrated that we're to this point, but I'm excited that we're seeing at least an RFP process to address some of these issues going forward. And I think you've put together an extensive discussion today in regards to the process. I'd like to be a little bit more involved with you and have a sit down with you and have a discussion about where we go from here in just a little bit more detail. So we can cover them. But those are my comments. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Ms. Jordan.
Thank you very much. The last time we went out to, I share some of Commissioner Lucy's concerns about how this kind of came out today. Interesting. The last time we went out to RFP, of all the potential vendors that you listed up there, the last time we went out, how many of them chose under the current contract provisions of RTC? How many of them chose not to bid because they didn't like the provisions of it?
I don't recall any of them doing that.
Okay, so they all participated, even though we still had the maintenance issue, we still had the multiple layers of, exposure, all those things. So they still bid. Is there something that makes you think that the number of vendors wouldn't want to bid us because of those contract provisions?
No, I fully expect we will receive 7 proposals from the 7 firms that I listed.
Okay, so there was a few things in that I was kind of confused as to why we were lowering some of our expectations when we are not necessarily anticipating that someone's going to just kind of thumb their nose at us because it's too strict or something. I don't know. There's some of that I was a little confused by that. The other part of it is, and this is to anybody that wants to submit a proposal, the feedback that I get, two things that concern me. The on-time thing, that's important, but I get a lot of feedback from folks saying maybe that on-time requirement or a bonus to meet it or exceed it. I hear a lot of complaints about the buses just blazing through the stops, meaning they stop at the absolute minimum and they get going because they're maybe trying to meet that criteria or get a bonus because of it. So I wonder if that incentive might be a bad thing versus a really good thing. I've heard of people, running for the bus anyway, so I don't know that that's a great, we want them to be on time, but I don't want anybody to be in a safety situation trying to get a bonus. The other thing I think is important in an RFP, and I'm sure during the hiring process, all of the vendors do it, I hear a fair amount. I hear some good things, like I expressed earlier, but I hear a fair amount that the drivers are rude. They're just rude. And there is, we all have tough days, but at the end of the day, they're in the customer service business. And that should be, I hate to say part of the RFP process, but something of a interaction training requirement about rider interaction and being pleasant. Because I do hear that a lot, that riders feel that some of the drivers are rude.
Yeah.
And that means if someone's rude to me, I may not want to ride the bus again if I have another alternative, and then that affects our ridership. And so anyway, that's my feedback.
Mr. McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and my comments were towards the liquidated damages as well, and I understand that if somebody bids and they anticipate that they're going to have a certain level of failure, they're going to build that into their bid amount, but you also have to have some pretty significant penalties if they don't provide the service that they promised under the contract. And a couple of the areas that I see is Commissioner Jordan's comments about the driver's interaction with the riders. I mean, that is a very important part of the process to make sure that we have the relationship with the riders. And then the other is the key positions. I mean, if they're not willing to pay enough money to keep positions filled, then there should be significant penalty to the fact that that's going to cause a reduction in service. And so whether that is based upon the position itself or we don't have a missed route here. If I've got a route that I can't man, we don't have a penalty in there for if they can't man a route for a day or a shift. I appreciate the fact that we've got preventive maintenance in here, that if they aren't maintaining the vehicles, that we've got a penalty on it, and because that's a major part of keeping our fleet running. But if we have missed routes, if we have the complaints from the residents or the riders, but the other part is I see a lot of, and I hear from the drivers, a lot of the accidents and other things that occur are based upon the time performance, and they've got penalties to them from the employer trying to meet these timelines that we have for on time. So the drivers push to be on time or be penalized, and then so that leads to people driving unsafely. That might be part of the interaction between the passengers and so the on-time performance, I think, is something that we may not want to stress as much as some of the other areas. So, but I appreciate that we looked into and worked with the possible bidders on this and came up with issues and the impacts on them to bid it, and we're asking for an impossible thing to provide more service for less money, and so it's good that we get their input on how they can do a better job of it. But my key thoughts are those on the liquidated damages. Thank you.
Mr. Gibson.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I'd like to have perhaps focus the commission's discussion now on the evaluation criteria slide. What this slide presents is 6 concepts, if you will, or 6 areas of focus, beginning with key personnel and extending on innovative approaches and technologies. This has to be in a rank order of importance. I'm going to just throw out there, I think perhaps, innovative approaches and technologies ought to be a little bit higher up there. It's enough. I think all of these firms have more than enough key personnel and staffing on their benches around the country and around the world to provide us a great set of resumes and a great project team. But I would like to, have us discuss innovative approaches and technologies and maybe think about what is it from that angle we want to have out of this RFP. So I would open it or perhaps encourage perhaps a little discussion on that topic of what we mean or what we would like to see or what you would like to see as a board on innovative approaches.
Okay, any questions, comments? Ms. Jordan?
Thank you very much. And I would agree with that. One of the questions I have, what is quality of required plans? What does that mean?
Well, that's actually part of what you were alluding to when you talked about customer service. We agree with you wholeheartedly on the route drivers and that challenge. We have a whole variety of plans that they have to submit as part of their proposal, addressing the different components of providing the service. So everything from facility maintenance, vehicle maintenance, customer service training, safety training, all those things. So there's a host of plans that they submit that tell us their approach to doing this service. And we are, to your point, we are calling out ambassador training in this contract that we really want to. All of them will do that, and they have monthly safety meetings where they get an opportunity to interact with their coach operators and give them updates on safety or other issues, including customer service. But we really believe a much more rigorous program of customer service and ambassador training is necessary. And so we're spelling that out very clearly.
Okay. And then the very first one, the key personnel, are these in some sort of ranking order right now?
They can be, and they need to be in the RFP. Yes.
But they're not right now?
They're up for discussion right now, absolutely.
Okay, because the very first one, key personnel and the proposed project organizational structure, what?
What is that? Yeah, well, I that's a very good question. Clearly, the key personnel are the key people right here on site who are supporting this service. So that's the general manager, in our mind, is the most key. But you also have an operations manager, you have a maintenance manager. We're looking at, should there be a human resources, should there be a labor relations? And then there's that corporate structure above, making sure that they don't forget about these guys once they drop them all off in Reno, Nevada, that they continue to come in. So we want to see who all these people are, what their experience and credentials are. So that's essentially what that is. How are they structured to support our service here in Nevada?
Got it. And I would just argue that the bus drivers are the most important, but that's just me. Thank you.
You're right, they are.
Mr. McKenzie.
Thank you, and that was kind of a comment I had. When I look at key positions, I look at the mechanics in the shop and the drivers in the seat, not the people sitting in the office who don't provide the service that we're asking them for, although they are important to coordinate that service. We talked a lot a couple months ago about approaches to addressing the expansion of service while not increasing the cost that much with the Uber bus idea and stuff like that. And that's the kind of thing I'd like to see in our innovative approaches, is because we've got large areas that don't have transit service within our region, that people would like to see it, but there's no way we can set a fixed route in there because there's just not the ridership. So and that type of some kind of an innovative way to do those lighter service calls would also help us with our paratransit services because there's a lot of those people that don't require the actual paratransit but are eligible for it, that if we had another cheaper method of providing the service, that we we could do that. And then I think that the management of this van pool process would be something that we might want to look at having them include, where they're overseeing and managing the van pools that the huge fleet of vans that we have. And therein, they would have an ability to possibly expand that service even wider than what we've got currently. So Lee was asking about some ideas on those approaches. There's just a couple ideas that there might be a possibility of us.
Mr. Gibson?
Mr. Chairman, I think just to get to the point, I was thinking of moving innovative approaches and technologies up from the last of the technical qualifications and importance to perhaps maybe number 1 or number 2. Again, I personally believe all these firms are capable of providing key personnel and putting together an organizational chart, and I think they're all capable of walking in here and showing a portfolio of project experience and qualifications, both nationally and around the world. I personally, David, I'd like us to take a look at moving that innovative approaches up. I want someone who's going to come in here and deal with our specific labor market issues, as well as our need to be a little more innovative in our service delivery approaches. And let's judge those proposals on that standpoint. And I think Commissioner, I'm hearing loud and clear from Commissioner McKenzie, sometimes you have a bias in these proposal RFP processes to look at the general manager. Maybe we need to be looking at the mechanics and the qualifications for those folks. So
Yeah, I think
you had a good statement about historically we train the operator and hire the mechanic. I want to see how these firms perhaps approach the training the operator and training the mechanic so we can keep the mechanic.
In our current contract, we do have a LD that is called maintenance of a staffing plan. And it essentially gets at that where if you don't have the adequate staffing to fill all those positions and are demonstrating a process for actively recruiting and retaining those folks, that we can impose an LD. That has been one of the difficult ones for us to clearly articulate and define. So we were thinking that maybe is not as necessary, but I'm hearing from you all that perhaps we want to keep that in there in some form or fashion that really does try to address the operators and the maintenance. I also noticed that in my slide, it did leave off the missed trips under the LDs, so that was an error on my part creating that slide. In your agenda item, you'll see to Commissioner McKenzie's questions, missing those trips is huge, and we do have an LD of $1,000 per occurrence that will be in the contract.
David, let me ask you a question. We're structured to give direction to start the RFP procedure. Maybe when we've got time, maybe we can go over these evaluation criteria at another date and try to put them in. You can bring some suggested order to us.
Value.
Yeah, and then we can do that at our next meeting because we've got a while. When are you going to put the RFP out? It's going to be in.
Well, I was hoping to bring something for you to approve at the next meeting.
Mr. Chair.
But we can certainly play with that at that time.
Mr. Chair, if I may, we'll bring a draft RFP, but certainly it'll be malleable enough that should you want to reorder.
Sure.
Yeah, that if you want to reorder these criteria, I think we'll be able to do that.
Mr. Lucy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I have to agree with the Executive Director, Mr. Jeckling, is that I think the innovative approach, because we're talking about issuing a 10-year contract and 4-year base with 3 2-year extensions. And I mean, for me, key personnel and staffing personnel are paramount. And innovative approaches, though, is right up there, because if we're talking about 10 years, we're already in the process of working with UNR about buses, automated buses, and different things of that nature. I want to make sure whatever company we hire going forward has approaches to those types of technologies and is willing to work with us, because that is going to be a challenge with staffing. It's going to be challenging with their driver base. If you're going to do autonomous buses and what that's going to look like, different services and how they're going to manipulate around our growing economy here and our growing region, and how they're going to better serve maybe our industrial areas versus some of our residential areas. I really want to have some of those innovative approaches, because to Director Gibson's point, if you're coming to submit an RFP, you better already have a lot of project experience. You better be able to run a vehicle and facility maintenance. You better have, some basic required plans, quality of required plans set forward by us. I think those should be at the bottom. But having an innovative approach to how you're going to address transit in a growing region such as ours, with the technology and with a tier 1 university, and how we're going to do even discussions, and if that includes rail in the future or what that may include. I want to know that they have the conduit available to do that.
Ms. Jordan.
Thank you very much, and I'll wrap it up. I agree, innovation approaches and technologies higher up, the microtransit part is a huge component of, I think, where we're headed. And I have to believe the concerns that were expressed today about personnel directly tied to the 1,000 missed trips. Because you can't keep and maintain the good drivers that'll get you to keep the trips, and maybe those same, maybe lower quality employees are the ones that are not as friendly, and that whole thing. So that, to me, that is the priority in the RFP, is addressing where the deficiencies are most glaringly apparent, and that's in the personnel side. So my 2 cents, but anyway, I appreciate all of your input here today and look forward to the next round of discussions.
Okay, are there any further questions or comments?
Mr. Chairman, we'll take the commission's comments, and next month we'll bring back a kind of a draft that shows you how we're going to reorder the priorities and deal with the liquidated damage question, and hopefully have a RFP. We heard there was a presentation not too long ago. Some transit authorities are going, what is it, David, to a 2-page RFP and leaving a lot of room for, instead of a legalistic accounting exercise of a proposal, looking at more of a creative, malleable, flexible approach, so that the contractor and the transit authority can have a partnership that provides the opportunity to be flexible and adjust to changing service demands. I mean, my personal view is, I think one of the challenges we wrote an RFP and a contract years ago for the Great Recession. We're not in a Great Recession anymore. We're in maybe the great era of opportunity. And I think our RFP has to create that environment to allow for the delivery of opportunity, but we're still recognizing our significant financial constraints.
Okay, any other questions or comments? So you're looking for a motion to proceed with the RFP?
Essentially just accept the report, and we've given us some direction that we'll incorporate, yeah.
Okay, looking for a motion. What he said. Okay, we have a motion.
Second.
And a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Thanks, David. Okay, we'll move on to 6.1. Acknowledge the receipt of the 4th Street Parade Way Monthly Progress Report. Come on down, Warren.
Good morning. Warren Call with the RTC Project Manager for the 4th and Prater BRT project. Here to give you a construction status update. Okay, here we go. Okay, project status on the schedule. We've completed 357 working days, or 94% of the working days we have as of 7/20. And the anticipated project completion date is mid to the end of September 2018. On the budget, the contract value was $42.3 million. As to date, the contract has earned $32.5 million of that contract. Construction activity over the past month, utility work, storm drain work is substantially complete, as well as the Tonawah water main work. The Reno Dry utility work, the final utility company tie-overs in Reno up around Evans for AT&T is having been done in the past month. Street lighting conduit foundations, Wells Avenues to Evans Avenues have been completed. Traffic signal foundations in Valley Road as well have been completed. Sparks Dry utility work, that is substantially complete as well. Construction activities continued. Civil improvements, the Prater Way section between Galletti Way and Victorian under I-80 is completed. East Reno paving from Galletti to Montello has been completed. Sutro paving intersection is going on right now and will be done by July 28th, next Saturday. Placement of curb gutter and sidewalk in Reno from Wells Avenues to Evan Avenues on the north side as well has been completed. The BRT stops, structural steel for Galletti eastbound and westbound has been in place. Decorative steel on the 15th Street station is on. The PCC paving in front of the stations is done at 15th Street and El Rancho. Our outreach efforts, we had a business outreach meeting in Reno for the paving operations coming into Reno. And we had a local restaurant, and we were listening to their concerns and letting them know what's going to be coming. The business outreach walks in advance of the traffic control closures, we do those on the Sutro closure. We did all the businesses in that area and continue to talk to them during the construction activity. Pedestrian accessibility walks, we do those weekly, as well as Wood Rogers, my construction manager, has an individual out there monitoring those like twice a week. Continued coordination with IDNOT, Sparks in Reno, and also we had a meeting with the Hot August Nights Committee, as well as INDOT and the City of Reno and City of Sparks for the upcoming Hot August Nights to make sure that it ran smoothly during the construction activity. Also during Hot August Nights, the roadway will be open 2 ways in the full length of the project with minimal construction activity. Planned construction activity over the next month. Reno, placement of curb gutter and sidewalk, street lights along the south side of the road to Evans Avenue. Remaining items of work are dry utility tile work on the north side of the road for AT&T near Evans. Reno paving, Sutro closure, as I mentioned earlier. And then after that, and after Hot August Nights, we'll go from Quincy to Evans Avenue with the road reconstruction. Sparks work, the BRT work at 15th Street and El Rancho, and the BRT concrete pavement work on the stations. Upcoming traffic control, the Reno paving, which would be Sutro intersection, again, is closed till the 28th, and then Quincy to Evans, one-way traffic westbound for that construction activity on the roadway. And having said that, any questions?
Questions or comments?
I already gave mine.
Okay.
He's grounded anyways, he can't.
Okay, well, then we'll move on to a motion to accept the report.
We got the calculator out for penalties on this.
I don't have a bond here today, so we're going to give you time.
Time out. Okay, looking for motion to accept the report then.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, passes unanimously. Thanks, Warren.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much.
Okay, we'll move on to 7.1, MPO. Receive a report on the proposed amendment 1 to the 2040 Regional Transportation Plan. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you. Amy Cummings, RTC Director of Planning. This is an update on where we are with our RTP amendment. We anticipate starting our public comment period and having that run July 27th through August 16th, having a public hearing at our August board meeting on the 17th, and then bring it back next month for action as well. And this is the same as we talked about last month. We are going to incorporate the Spaghetti Bowl early action item that we heard about in Director Malfabon's report earlier this morning. We're going to be incorporating the INDOT widening on US 395 from McCarran to Lemon. We're also going to be adding or moving up the widening of North Virginia from 2 to 4 lanes from Panther to Stead, and extending the Lemon widening that's currently in the RTP from Arkansas up to Chickadee, and adding some flood mitigation components to that project as well in partnership with City of Reno and Washoe County. This is some new information that we did not have last month, but City of Reno has reached out to us, and this is something that we feel is appropriate to include in this amendment. Due to the anticipated development activities in the West 4th Street corridor, there's an interest in accelerating that Complete Street project, which currently is in the out years of the RTP, And there's a desire to bring that up into the first 5 years of the RTP. That includes bicycle lanes, sidewalk improvements, and street trees in that section. And it was also suggested that we look at the next phase of our BRT system, and again, giving the densities that are expected in that West 4th Street corridor, of extending the Lincoln Line. So we don't have the funding on the transit operations side to be able to include that in the RTP at this time, but we would like to add that to our unfunded transit vision, which is where all of our BRT projects started. So we're happy to have advanced the first 2 of those, and this potentially would be our 3rd unfunded vision for BRT. We also have been coordinating with NDOT. They are asking us to accelerate our complete street and safety improvements on South Virginia Street. And this came out of our Virginia Street Multimodal Investment Plan in 2014. And one component of that was safety improvements between Arrow Creek Parkway and that next US or I-580 interchange to the south. This is another area where we have the potential for some private sector participation from adjacent business owners. We know we've had fatalities in this corridor. People travel very fast. There's not a great volume of traffic, so we are very concerned about safety in this section. So looking at items like a center median, reducing traffic speeds, and potentially adding a multimodal lane, and reducing it to 4 lanes instead of 6 lanes. Because with I-580 being parallel, we just don't need that 6-lane capacity anymore in this section. So proposing adding that to the first 5 years of the RTP. We've also been continuing with our air quality analysis, and as you can see from the tables here, the emissions projected to come from transportation improvements are underneath the motor vehicle emissions budget established in the state implementation plan. So this is working its way through the interagency consultation process, but we are under those emissions budgets and conforming with air quality standards. So that's where we are today, and we'll be bringing this back to you next month. If you have other things you would like us to look at before we start a public comment period, please let us know. Thank you.
Okay, questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, looking for a motion to accept the report.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Did you get that, Denise? Any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to add one comment on this item. I appreciate, I want Commissioner Jordan and Commissioner McKenzie to know, we really do appreciate the work the City of Reno staff has put into this. Those guys over there have helped us greatly in kind of thinking through some of these issues. So just wanted to add my thanks.
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we'll move on to General Administration. 8.1, review and set Executive Director Lee Gibson's goals for fiscal year 2019.
Good morning.
Angela
Reich, Director of Administrative Services. The item before you is to review and set Executive Director Gibson's goals for fiscal year 2019. You'll find attached a list of 9 proposed goals that incorporates some of the comments that you made last month when you rated Mr. Gibson's performance. We tried to capture those in these proposed goals. And therefore, I'll turn it over to Lee.
Mr. Chair, if I may, again, we pulled these off the record. There's actually number 10 I need to add, and that's actually something we put in here a couple of years ago, and that's basically, if I can have a moment of liberty, is for me to do what you tell me to do to the extent I can.
Until you can't.
Yeah, so we might want to just, again, perhaps a more proper way to say it is to take direction and adjust goals accordingly throughout the year. One of the things I'd like to do this year, and I'm looking at Angela to remind me to do this, but maybe each month do sort of a quick score sheet or what we call a wrap, just each month coming forward to let you know where we are in moving through some of these goals. Maybe not a goal, and perhaps something that should be raised under member items, but looking at number 4, affordable housing and joint development work with the Nevada legislature. Perhaps next month, August, we ought to bring an item forward to just highlight what we may see are items for the upcoming 2019 legislative session. I know we've got some thoughts on affordable housing. We have some thoughts on right-of-way. We have some thoughts on I know we want to be, it's not legislation, Rudy, but we certainly will be in full force at the hearing where bond questions and bond issues are raised with respect to what you need to have approved, and we'll be there in support. So we may want to, again, maybe that's not a goal, but, or maybe it is a goal, just be more supportive and expressive of support to NDOT as they seek debt financing for our projects in the north. So with that, I'll open it for comment.
Ms. Jordan.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief. It looks like you captured most everything that we kind of spoke about the last time. The one thing I would maybe add to the list, which goes with the transit operator discussion, is making a priority, continuing to explore innovative and entrepreneurial approaches to address transit and road-related, in particular, safety issues. I know we've talked about at length any sort of future partnerships we can have with any of the ride shares. I know we do bus passes, but how we can continue to meet our transportation needs, particularly in the outlying areas, maybe in some sort of partnership with some of those entities for those that can't be served by a fixed bus route. And those with disabilities, how we can, beyond our access bus system, potentially, help that situation as well in a creative fashion through technology and innovation.
Okay, got it.
Was that brief enough?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, looking for motion to approve the goals. What was that? Who said that?
The only guy that sounds like a bear.
Was that you that said so moved?
Yeah.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Do we have any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to legal issues. Dale. That's always a good sign.
At this moment.
Okay, public comment. I don't have any cards. Anybody in the audience wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the commission. Member items. Anybody have anything they want to bring up? I would like to bring something up. This is directed toward David. About over a year ago, we talked about extending bus service to the Galleria, and at that time, I didn't think it was necessary, but the demographics has changed out there so much. We have 300 new apartments already. Some of them are online now. We've got Sprouts, we've got Marshalls, and we got several new businesses and restaurants that are open up there. So if you could come back with a report and give a feasibility of what we can do out there, if anything, I think bus service is needed at this time. Any other comments? Okay, so we'll move on, and without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you.